the inspiration for everything I do. The ability to just say, I'm gonna follow what God wants me to do. Follow what my soul tells me it is that I'm supposed to be doing. So, needless to say, I went from visiting the prisons with my mama to being in the prisons and having my mama visiting me. So, this is how I chose my own path. And I think that, you know, my story starts with sobriety. You know, I went from working at Haymarket Center to being inpatient at Haymarket Center. Stayed there 2 years. Then sober, screwed it up. Got what, 8-9 years now. And I'm extremely grateful for both sobriety, sanity, and I'm telling you, some of the things that you experience out there give you a language that puts you, if you stay sober long enough, you'll be light years ahead of everybody else that's in your class. Yes. I promise you, because there's something about living at the cusp of death that teaches you something that nobody else will ever learn.
That's right.
I got the ability to go in any room, talk to a politician, go straight to the streets and talk to folks in the streets. Some people can't do that. They pay millions of dollars to learn that, and they cannot do it.
You do it.
And I make them pay. So anyway, we'll talk about that later. So, know your worth. You know what I'm saying? Know your worth. God didn't put you through all of that for nothing. And it also talks about in the big book, Alcoholics Anonymous, we're not servile and scrappy. We're not servile folks. You ain't gonna step on us just because we got sober. You know what I'm saying? I had an issue, and I'm working on that. And because I'm working on that does not then allow you to treat me a special way. I want the same exact pay that you would pay anybody else walking in the door to do this job. Because sometimes we work harder than other folks do, because we're passionate about our work. So I'm gonna say that, leave that there. What do I do now? So my story is one of both sobriety, gaining back sanity, and getting to work. I knew right in the door when I got sober that I had to do work. I had seen both my people in my community, including myself, fall victim of drugs and alcohol. I wondered for years why the circumstances existed. That kind of, why is there so many of us that's on drugs and numbing ourselves with this stuff? Let me go back a little bit. My stepfather, Mike Smith, used to tell me thought is the cause of it all, which has a lot to do with the reading that you were talking about. What you think is what you give power to. If I think about this water for 2 hours, I'm gonna give power to this water. So I put my mind on thoughts and positive things, and I started to become those things. My sobriety date is December 29th, 2009. I have a sponsor, his name is Alonzo. I chaired the meeting at Wicker Park for 5 years. And put me to work immediately. He's like, you're gonna chair this meeting. So I chaired the meeting for 5 years straight. And my original sobriety date was February 21st, 2006. And that's where I hit bottom. You know what I'm saying? That's where all scorecards read 0. You know what I mean? Like they said in the big book. All scorecards read 0. And I didn't have a house to go into or a place to go. And I ended up checking myself in the Haymarket Center. So hats off to everybody in Haymarket Center. I'm alumni. You know what I mean? That's how I feel about Haymarket Center. And that place, it brought me together. Them choke sandwiches in the morning, that stinking detox room, and all that. I went through it all, man. I stayed there for about 2 years, and before I made it out. And then I made it out. So right now, where am I at? I'm the deputy director of the Workers Center for Racial Justice. My job is to organize the most marginalized workers in the city of Chicago, make sure they have access to economy, right? One of the issues I think that's most important is that we live in a wage-based economy, right? Anybody know what that is? Follow me. If you stop following me, raise your hand or something, and I'll take a question. Wage-based economy. That means that I gotta have wage. I can't go to the grocery store, fill up my cart, go to the register, and be like, here, hold this hope, and let me leave with these groceries. Like, I gotta have wages. I gotta have tender, something to exchange for everything. If I want to get an apartment, I gotta have money to pay for that rent, right? It's not barter and trade. The old system was like barter and trade. That means I make suits, you got a cow, I'm gonna trade you this soup for some milk, I'm gonna trade some of that milk for some rice, and barter and trade, right? We actually have to we have to have access to capital, right? So what I started noticing is that there was trends that were happening in in the city where people that had less access to wages, less access to money, tangible money, you had higher rates of violence, right? People that had lower access to housing, you saw higher rates of violence. People that had lower access to education, you see higher rates of violence. So it wasn't like, I feel like when Trump made this announcement, let me get to my slides. When Trump made the announcement that he was going to send the federal government into Chicago to solve the problem, I said, you can send the feds here, but the problem's still going to stay, right? The problem ain't going to change. The problem is, and I'll get to some of my slides here, the problem is that we have a lack of jobs, a lack of housing, a lack of education. Black youth from 20 to 24 years old in Chicago, Illinois, were worse off in 2015 than they were in 1960, as far as employment. In 1960, we had 24% of us was employed. That's still low, right? You look at 2015, you got 15.1% of the folks employed, right? Predominantly, these jobs that you see are lacking are in Inglewood, they're in Austin. All of these, I call it concentrated poverty, where you take poor folks that have scattered resources. Like I said, wage-based economy. Ain't no jobs in Inglewood, right? There's factories over there, but they ain't hiring workers, right? So you got factories in Austin too, or factories on the west side, but they ain't hiring black folks or people from that community either, right? So what you see is that in those areas, they have lack of access to employment, lack of access to education, and they have lack of access to housing. So what happens is that you get that concentrated poverty, and it becomes like a melting pot. When they knocked down the projects in Chicago, right, CHA fell, you've seen the migration of over 181,000 black people out of the city proper and to the southern borders of Chicago, right? People moved out of the city proper into rural Chicago, or they got moved out to the burbs of Iowa. Some people ended up in Wisconsin. People got Section 8 vouchers in the middle of Chattanooga, I don't even know where, right? They gone, right? We know they ain't here no more. Some people had vouchers and they were promised to get property to come back, right? They're going to reestablish row houses and bring people back. They never did it, right? So what happened is you get all of these folks that have migrated south. So you got people that were already south that's fighting for scarce resources, right? They're like, man, I ain't got no money either. You stack on top of me. Now we competing for the same customers, right? And that's not just when it comes to when I say. Let me break this down, right? So I can break it down to because I just got done presenting the same thing at Loyola, and I got to bring it down, right? So I can say it like this: economic violence, right? Everybody knows Eric Garner, right? Who Eric Garner was, the brother that was killed in New York City for selling. What was he selling?
Luke Squares.
Luke Squares. Everybody knows who Alton Sterling is, right? Alton Sterling, the young man killed in New Orleans. What was he selling? Bootleg DVDs.
Bootleg DVDs.
Bootleg DVDs, right? Think about that. It's not an easy hustle, right? Selling loose cigarettes is a hard hustle. This man got killed for selling loose cigarettes, right? Think about this. There's a formal economy and there's an alternative economy, right? The formal economy is I go to this place, I apply for a job, they hire me, I get a job, they pay taxes on that check, and they cut me a check, right? That's the formal economy. When you don't have access to that formal economy, what happens is people create alternative economies, right? Those alternative economies started with number running back in the day. People was running numbers, right? And then it went from running numbers, then you had pimping, right? But not everybody wants to try to make most of those things that happen in alternative economies something evil, right? It's not evil. These are people that are surviving because you also got the candy lady who can cut your fed charge, right? Yes. You also got the sock man who's selling socks. You got everybody that doesn't fit into the formal economy that fit into this bubble that we call an alternative economy, right? And the only reason that they're there is because the government has yet to begin to compete with the dope man for jobs, right? If the dope man's the only one hiring on the block, why do you think they're going there, right? But if you could compete, we're asking Chicago, Rahm Emanuel, Governor Browner, you need to come and compete with these alternative institutions because these is leading to death, right? Because when you get into alternative economics, you got folks that you got your own rules, you got your own police, you got your own consequences, right? They're governed by a whole new structure, right? The formal economy, you got your own, you steal from the job, you get fired, get written up. Over here, you steal, you get a pumpkin head, you get thrown out a window, it's still consequences. We govern this thing differently, right? And don't nobody really want to be here. They only here out of desperation. So we're trying to get people out of there and into sustainable jobs. And we ain't talking about them hyper-exploitive jobs, man. I've done the temp labor thing. Whether you work in the city of Chicago, you want to go to work in the city of Chicago, you apply in the city of Chicago, they send you out to the suburbs to work for $8.25 an hour, right? That's exploitive. They have literally, every business in the world sells something. Go to Nike, you leave out the door with a bag full of Nike, right? You go to Jewel, you walk out with a bag full of what? Groceries, right? You go to a temp labor spot, you walk out with a car full of people. They have made slavery legal again, in a very simple way. You go to the staffing agency, you sit in the room, while you sit down in that room, somebody gets a phone call, so I need 50 bodies. I'm gonna give you $20 per hour per body. They say, okay, I got 20 people in it. 1, 2, 3, I'm gonna get 20 people. I'm gonna send y'all out there to go work at this factory for $8 an hour. I keep $11.75 off of each body that I sell per hour. Right now, when you're making $8.25 per hour, I get 20 times $11.75 times 8 hours per person. That's slavery. Remember the auction blocks back in the day that you used to, I mean, this is Black History Month, so we're gonna bring it there, right?
Go ahead.
Remember the auction blocks back in the day, they used to wax us down with all types of castor oil, whatever it was, I don't know what it was, Vaseline, whatever it was.
Yeah.
They put all over you and they say, this is a good one, this is a firm one, this is a strong one, right? It's the same thing you see happening in temp labor. They'll come through and they'll pick the strongest ones out the bunch. You look like you can.
Yeah.
I'm gonna send you back there, you over here. You see racial discrimination, you see all different types of discrimination, gender discrimination. They'll say on the phone, I want heavies, I want lights. Hang up the phone, that means heavies is men, lights is women, right? Some of the biggest institutions in the city of Chicago, jobs that made America great at one point in time have now turned into temp labor spots. Why? Because they can pay somebody $8.75 an hour for a word we use in sociology called perpetuity for the rest of your life. That means we never have to give you a day off. Because you're a temp. You don't work for the factory. You work for the staffing agency. So there is no, it's a way of getting around labor laws that have existed since the New Deal, right? Remember those when the New Deal took place, right? So it's an extreme, it's hyper exploitive, the system that's going on. So the conditions that are happening to my people, it's extremely important that we make people aware, because part of my sobriety is not just, it's about consciousness raising. It's like God said, you're gonna get sober because there's work for you to do, right? And I would see young brothers that are coming in sobriety and then they get that job and they're grateful for that job and they're happy about that job, but then that job is beating them down, tearing them up. And I started seeing like Black and Latino folks going at it, fighting. You know what I'm saying? Fighting over, and they don't know the stories that's going on behind the walls, right? So you got, what we were seeing at the staffing agencies is you would see a room full of Black and Latino folks, right? The Latino folks would get first access to the jobs, right? And we was like, Black folks were like, man, you know what I'm saying? They taking all our jobs. You know what I'm saying? The Latinos like, they lazy, right? So we did this thing, we brought together a racial unity dialogue. We had translators come into the room, had a room full of temp laborers, right? The Latino folks started talking about their experience. And the Black folks was like, man, you don't even want that job. Because it was, I mean, like, they was learning about, folks was getting carpal tunnel from working 12, 13 hours at these factories for $5.75 an hour. They wouldn't even get minimum wage. Because some of these workers were undocumented. So because they were undocumented, you can exploit them at higher rates than you can a Black man. You still a sister's check. Even if she is getting $8.25 an hour, she gonna want every bit of that $8.25. And if she don't get it, she going straight to whoever. She gonna figure it out. She gonna get on, call my son, I'm about to get on Google, tell him where I get it. She don't get her money. You know what I'm saying? But if you do not have a structure that you could turn to that protects you, right? One of the biggest, what makes us one of the biggest driving factors in our unemployment is the fact that we became full citizens. When we was 3/5 of a human being, we were the greatest workers on earth. They loved us. You're 3/5 of a human being. Come on, get in. I say all the time. There was a time where there was 0% unemployment in the Black community, and that's when we were slaves. Right. So ever since we became full citizens, we lost the ability to become laborers. Right, because they have to pay us, and they don't want to pay us, right? They want to find whoever you can extract the most money from is who you pull in to do the job. So it isn't that they like Latinos more than they like Blacks, it's that they hate both of us differently. You know what I'm saying? So we had to learn that in the process, right? And so we began to fight.